And the C-SPAN 50 State Capitals Tour continues. We're at our fifth stop today outside the State House in Richmond, Virginia. And joining us on the C-SPAN bus is former Virginia Governor Doug Wilder. He served from 1990 to 1994. Governor Wilder is a grandson of slaves, the first African-American governor in the U.S. since Reconstruction. Governor Wilder, in your recent autobiography, Son of Virginia, you write that you are a product of that state, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What did you mean by that?
Well, I mean, as you pointed out, being the grandson of slaves, one would never expect that person to rise to be the governor of the state, to occupy the same seat that Patrick Henry occupied, that Thomas Jefferson occupied. And so to the extent that those travails were overcome, it was a testament to show what the people of Virginia had gone through relative to refurbishing and making certain that that image didn't continue. And so I like to think that we are what I would like to say is the new dominion rather than the old dominion. And so I'm a product of that. And I represent what the people of Virginia have wrought forth and continue so to do.
Well, Governor Wilder, as you well know, Virginia's been in the news this past year. Is it the new dominion? Have things changed?
Yes, things have changed. The situation is that eternal vigilance is the price of freedom or liberty. You just can't address a situation today and think that it's going to be gone. You have to nurture it. It's like everything else. That your freedoms are things that you have to work at. The unfortunate thing is that what did take place in Charlottesville was such as now we look back, some of that could have been prevented, some of that could have been stopped, some of that could have been curtailed. And yet it doesn't describe Virginia, does it? Nor does it describe Charlottesville. And the people of Virginia don't like what went on. They don't like how it ended up. And getting to your question, it means that we just can't go by what we used to do. We've got to see what we did to improve what we did and to address it into the times of the day. One of the things that I've always insisted that we need to do more of is to acquaint our people, all of our people, with our history, with the history of America, with the history of Virginia, with the history of all of the places, so that they can learn from what we have come from to know where we are, moreover, than to predict more, I would think, conscientiously as to where we need to go. And I don't think we do that in our schools. I don't think we teach enough of our history. We don't discuss it as I think we should, because America is still in search of itself, as Theodore White used to speak when he wrote the books, America in Search of Itself. He would talk about every 30 years we go through this cycle of needing to see who we are as a people. I think we're there now.
202 is the area code if you would like to talk with former Virginia Governor Doug Wilder. 748-8000 for Virginia residents, 748-8001 for all others. Governor, you spoke about history. After serving as governor, you ran for and became mayor of Richmond. When you talk about history,
Yes.
there's Monument Avenue down there in Richmond. What is that,
Yes.
and what do you think should be done with it?
I think Monument Avenue is Monument Avenue. And when I was a kid, I knew what it represented. I knew what it meant. I knew where I was not supposed to go, where I was not supposed to live. And one of the things that I saw about Monument Avenue, and you hear the stories now about the monuments there and what is there. But in the 70s, the 90s, right after I became governor, or left the office of governor, I wanted to make certain that Monument Avenue had the addressment of all of Americans. And that's why I worked as hard as I could to get the statue of Arthur Ashe on Monument Avenue. And some people would say, well, why do you want Monument Avenue? I said, because that's where people have put those that they revere, where they honor. And so with the problems that we have in our country today, the problems we have in our schools today, particularly education, it's more important to improve the quality of education now, spending taxpayers' dollars more wisely now on the kinds of things that we need to do now than this talk about destroying and taking down. Surely there are going to be difficulties with reference to what goes on. One of the things when I was elected to the state senate in 1970, I had no idea that Carry Me Back to Old Virginia was the state song. Now, if you remember the words of that song, you said, that's where this old dock is, hard and long to go. But even in the second stanza, and I point out in the first chapter of that book you referenced, Carry Me Back, to say that we shouldn't be having this as the state song of Virginia. The first bill I introduced was to get rid of the state song. They said that will be the end of Wilder. We'll never see him anymore. I'd only been in the office 2 weeks, but I can tell, I knew the song because we were forced to learn it as kids in school. They stopped singing that song anywhere that I've ever heard, and then ultimately they came to retire it as, they call it now state song emeritus. Those are the kinds of things that education brings about. Arthur Ashe's statue is there on Monument Avenue, and when people come to see it, they're very proud of it. One of the things about that statue of Arthur Ashe, he has a tennis racket in one hand, and in his other he has a book. And underneath that, these kids are looking up in adulation at him and what he is stressing, because he's a very good friend of mine. Sports is one thing, but stay in your books. Get smart.
Should Robert E. Lee remain on Monument Avenue?
That will be a decision for people to make as to whether they feel that Robert E. Lee should remain on Monument Avenue. As you know, that decision is being discussed. That the mayor has made a commission, he's appointed a commission to look at it. Questions come up as to whether the city even owns that property or did own the property, or do they have the authority? Should the state and the city get together? And I think they will. I think they will speak. And I think reasonable minds will emerge. And I don't think it's a knee-jerk solution. There again, if you're speaking about expending millions of dollars at this time, Richmond Schools needs that money first. Then you can talk about other kinds of things like removing and getting rid of.
Well, let's hear from our viewers. Let's begin with Sherry in Portsmouth, Virginia. You're on with former Governor Doug Wilder.
It's an honor to speak with you, Governor Wilder.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I wanted to ask you to comment on the fact that in 2 years we will be celebrating the 400th anniversary of when the first Africans who joined the Jamestown colony arrived, and what efforts are you a part of in terms of that commemoration? We would hope that Fort Monroe would become a national venue for conversations about race in America. We feel like because this is where slavery started and ended in America, Virginia has a responsibility and an opportunity to teach America how to overcome the legacy of slavery. And you're talking about education makes me realize that you are very much probably a part of wanting to see us be the leaders in terms of like this work.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, I will be a part of that. The Jamestown-Yorktown Foundation is a part of that. I will be working with that aspect of when the first Africans came to America. As you know, there are 4 separate things that we'll be celebrating in the 2019 Advent. And that is the tobacco being here for the first time in 1619, women coming for the first time, Africans coming for the first time, and then the establishment of the first legislative body. One of the things I want to do is continue to speak about what did take place when Africans came here. They were not brought here as slaves. They came here, slavery was not made legal until some 50 more, some odd years later. I'm very much interested in making certain that we have what we call the National Slavery Museum at the first African Baptist church at 14th and Broad Streets in Richmond, presently owned by Virginia Commonwealth University. And hopefully in 1619, we saw what took place. One of the things our history will tell us, though, that slavery as such wasn't just practiced in the South. We will show how the North participated and practiced as well as profited from slavery. Many people don't know that. And consequently, I think it goes to the history that we speak of. Fort Monroe is an excellent place to have the stories continue to be told. So I will hopefully be playing a role, making certain we do the kinds of things to let the general public know what's going on by education and by seminars and by symposiums and going to the areas and letting people know who we are and what we have in mind for that great period of time to take place.
Jeff is calling in from Temple Hills, Maryland. Go ahead, Jeff. You're on with Doug Wilder.
Well, Governor Wilder, it is indeed a pleasure to speak with you. I followed your
Thank you.
tenure down in Virginia, and among your many accomplishments, I've always wanted to publicly thank you for what you did for Allen Iverson. I thought
Thank you.
that was one of the most heartfelt acts that I have seen. I've been a school teacher for more than 20 years.
You kind.
I've seen kids who
Well, thank you, sir.
who lose opportunities and then regain them, and some lose them and never get them. So I always wanted to thank you for that. And lastly, I kind of felt that what went on at UVA back a couple months ago, I got to be honest with you, I kind of thought some of it was a bit staged, drummed up by the Trump administration to sort of shift the attention of the country. But then what happened the next day out on the street was something different. And it just seems like we're always getting conflicting messages about what real white supremacy is, and all of us who are in the know that it's not a bunch of people walking around with torches chanting, that it's policy and the wealthy that control where and who gets what. And so I was just curious to know where you thought and how you think we need to get that message out.
All right, Jeff, we're going to leave it there. Governor Wilder?
Well, thank you very much for your acknowledgement of what took place with Allen Iverson. What a lot of people don't know is that there were three young men that were involved. I caught the devil for what I may have done for Iverson, but I did that for three young men. And I didn't do it for a basketball player. I did it for three young men that I felt were prosecuted for something with a statute, a law that had never been used. It was an anti-riot statute that had never even been utilized before. And I was very pleased that after I did that, even those who were pursuing it through the courts in Virginia sustained my view to the extent, not that they had to, because I had already done the pardoning, but to the extent that they concurred in what I did, I was very pleased. I do think there was some staging in Charlottesville. I do think that a lot of it that takes place today is staging. And that's why I say it's so important for us to educate our people as to who we are and where we are. When I'm introduced sometime when I was elected governor of Virginia and campaigned through every city, every independent town, every county, I took 60 days. I wouldn't come off the road. I wouldn't stay in hotels. I went to every, what I would call conceivable place you could campaign. Some people don't know, or may still not know, that Virginia has the smallest concentration of African American voters of any southern state. It numbers around 13 to 15%. And so which means for me to have been elected, I had to have any numbers of persons not designated African Americans to vote for me. and they couldn't vote for someone they didn't know, and consequently I went to them. And I think that's a testament not to me, but to the people of Virginia who have shown that they're going to break from the shackles of the past. They're going to break from what people designated them to be, and that's just why I say we are a new dominion, not the old dominion. And I think the people of Virginia don't accept what took place in Charlottesville. That's not Virginia. That's not the people of Virginia. And as we have seen now, any numbers of outsiders came there. That's still continuing. That's why it's so important for us to bind our wounds, come together to understand that this is our country, and we will be a part of making it an America for all Americans.
A lot of people are on search engines right now looking up Doug Wilder and Allen Iverson, but we're going to take this call from Mo in Latham, New York. Mo, you're on the air.
Actually, sir, it's from Albany. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
We're listening.
Can you hear me, sir?
I'm sorry, we're going to move on.
Yes, I hear you.
That caller is gone. We're moving on to Charlene in Vero Beach, Florida. Hi, Charlene.
Hi there. How are you?
Please go ahead. We're listening.
Hello, how are you?
Okay. It's very, very good to see you and meet you this morning. This is the first time I'm seeing you, Governor Wilder, and I love what you have to say.
Oh, good to meet you.
It hits home. I blame a lot of our chaos on how our schools' history books have been changed. The emphasis has not been put on both sides of history and the truth in what has happened in our country, because that's so important. You can't go forward if you don't know what you did in the past. You'll keep making the same mistakes.
Absolutely.
So I love what you're doing, and I encourage you very much that is where we belong. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I really do thank you for that. I think that we're going through some very difficult times in America today, but we've gone through more difficult times before, and we, as Dr. King would say, will overcome.
Governor Wilder, do you get more done as governor or mayor?
Yes. Well, you know, I used to say that both jobs are very, very difficult jobs, but you're closer to the people in many regards. But when you're the mayor, the people are closer to you, and they can get to you, and they will tell you what they don't like and what they don't. And that's where the rubber meets the road. The rubber meets the road. Who picks up your trash? Who puts out the fires? Who is called to respond to crimes? And who is responsible for your schools? Who's responsible for your safety? And so that's local government. And so I think the experience that I had as governor helped me greatly to become mayor. And I was the first strong mayor that they've had in over 60 years. And I only did so because I thought that we needed a strong mayor form of government. And I worked to get that done. I wasn't looking to run, but as it turned out, I ended up being that, and I don't regret it at all. But both are very difficult jobs. Local government is really tough.
At the age of 85, 86, is there another elected office for you?
Yes, I'm going to run for cover. And if you can find some place for me to be covered. No, but I'm very much interested up at the Wilder School of Government and Public Affairs at Virginia Commonwealth University, where I teach. The school is named for me. And I'm involved in symposiums. We're putting on one November the 2nd, relative to the governor's race, the kinds of things and the questions that people won't ask at debates, whether they're national or local. And I had a conversation earlier with one of the persons here in the bus, and I can tell you that we ignore the people more often than we should. We don't listen to the people. We need to involve the people, and that's why I think symposiums, listening to people, because we are paying far more for government and getting less. And people are saying, well, why do we need so much government when we don't see the fruits? And I think it's so important for that to take place. So my job will be to further educate and further explain and further involve and listen to the people.
Randy in Williamsburg, Virginia, we are listening for your question or comment.
Yes, good morning, America, and good morning, Governor Wilder. It's your neighbor here, Randy
Hello,
O'Neill.
Randy.
And I'm going to the state
Very
school
good.
board meeting this morning in hopes of convincing them that my mobile fitness trailer will add value to their academic day, improving the learning environment, the activities, and some background knowledge for the kids in RVA. And so I hope to convince Dr. Staples, who I've been working in and around his divisions over the last 15 years, to help me get in the schools and on the block, especially since I've already worked in 22 of them. And I believe that was because of your insight into health, education, and safety. And one more note.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for removing the battle flag from the Virginia National Guard fighter jets. I think that was a wonderful step in.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Let's explain that to the people as to what that meant. The Virginia Air National Guard, when I was governor, had a patch that they wore on the sleeve, and it was Confederate insignia for the Virginia Air National Guard. I had no idea that it was the case, and a sergeant came in to see me about a matter, and he brought that with him, and he showed it to me. And I said, "This is not on our National Guards." He said, "Yes, it is. I'm in the National Guard." And I said, "Well, very well, I think I know how we can handle that." And I called the Adjutant General to inquire as to whether it was the case. He said it was, and I told the Adjutant General to remove it. He did, and there was never any fuss, nor any argument, nor anything about it at all. It was done. And thank you for recognizing that, and any numbers of people have said since it was the right thing to do.
Charles is in Bristol, Virginia. Hi, Charles.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
Good morning. How you,
Well, I met you, Governor, in the campaign of '89 in Clintwood, Virginia, when you come to the coal fields. Do you
Oh,
remember
my
coming to the
goodness.
coal fields?
Yes, indeed. Yes, I do remember. I loved it.
Well,
And
you carried
it was
the coal
people
field
like
vote.
you. Yes, I did. And when you say that in 2000, when you say this in 2017, that Wilder carried the Southwest Virginia vote, and particularly in the coal fields, people would think you're crazy. But I did. But only because of people like yourself who gave me the opportunity to come and visit, to be heard, and to listen to me and to hear what it was I was speaking of. And I can't thank you enough, Randy, for what you did. I mean, not Randy, that's O'Neill, that was the other caller, but thank you so much for what you did as it relates to providing that opportunity for me.
Governor, do you agree that Virginia is basically 3 or 4 different states? You got the Hampton Roads area, Northern Virginia, Bristol.
No, I think it's a state that has any numbers of persons that have come to live here from other parts of the country, retirees from the northeastern part of the country, many in Northern Virginia who've never known how the people in Southwest Virginia live, people in Southwest Virginia who might not know the same thing. Virginia and the people in Southwest Virginia, they're closer to 5 state capitals, more so than Richmond. And so I think with travel being what it is now, we are one state, but we have different feelings about different things, different ideologies and different expressions. We may speak differently, we may talk differently, we might even dress differently, but we're one people and we're one state, we're one America, and that'll continue.
3.8% unemployment rate currently in Virginia, 8.4 million people. Scott is in Wichita Falls, Texas. Hi, Scott.
Good morning. How you doing, sir?
Fine, and you?
I'm doing great. I just wanted to say I used to live in Stanton, Virginia, back in the days when you was governor.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm very
Right.
I was just going to say I'm very pleased to see the direction Virginia is going in now, because it wasn't such a great place back then when I lived there. It was like kind of a lot of, police racial profiling going on. And
Well,
we
Go ahead, Governor.
I would say that I'm pleased to see that we lost a president of James Madison, former president of James Madison University, Ron Carrier, not too long ago, and I used to go up to Harrisonburg and Stanton and those areas, and as the previous caller called from the Southwest, this would pretty much be the northern part of the state, but the more northwestern part of the state. And it gets to the question that was asked earlier relative to the different parts of Virginia. And they are different parts, and people have different ways of expressing themselves and different ways of living. And yet, I think what we're finding out is that Virginia is pretty much a bellwether state too. It's more considered a mid-Atlantic state now than a southern state. And I think the ideology here is more independent. I think you'll find more growing independent voters than party voters, and the party dictate doesn't necessarily produce the victories that it may have at one time, and that might be good.
Norfolk, Virginia is next, and this is Richard. Hi, Richard, go ahead.
Yes, Governor, I worked with you 25 years ago to get that one gun per month bill passed. I'm sure you remember that thing. That was quite a ruckus.
I do remember. Do I remember?
Yeah. We got the thing passed, and I thought at the time, well, it's just a beginning, and we're gonna finally win this battle. But in the meantime, we're killing well over 30,000 people a year in this country, and heaven knows how many are being wounded and damaged, their lives ruined. And it seems as though, well, apparently we've got over 300 million guns that are out there. And I'm wondering, is there any kind of hope that we can reduce this carnage that goes on in this country? Because it's impossible.
All right, we got the point, Richard. Governor Wilder?
Well, let me say this to you, Richard. Thank you for your help in that regard. And I might point out, when that did take place, the Virginians, through polls, were showing that well over 65% of the people favored that. What we were talking about is not taking guns away from anybody, not taking handguns away, not taking any kinds of guns away, but limiting the numbers of guns you could purchase. Purchase one gun a month. If you had a relative, a wife, that's two a month. If you had a son who was old enough to purchase a gun, that's three a month. And it passed, and it was the law until a few years ago, and it was defeated in the Senate by one vote. And it was signed by the governor. The governor, Bob McDonnell, had supported the law when he was in the Senate. But he said that if the measure came to him, he would have very little choice but to sign it, which he did. Unfortunately, it's going to have a very tough time coming back. But for those people who recognize that the proliferation of handguns is big money, big money. And I'm not speaking of controlling anybody's right to own a gun, to hunt. I own guns. I don't use them, but I would be less than honest if I didn't say that. But we do need to control these overweening proliferation. I mean, it's just amazing, the numbers of guns that are out there in these neighborhoods. And where do they come from? And who profits from it? And then who suffers? you got to look at the overall results as to who's paying the price, and we'll see.
Governor Wilder, is it time to change the one-term governorship rule in Virginia?
I've always thought it was time, and I think the reason that it hasn't changed, Virginia governor is a very powerful governor constitutionally. Not only do you have line item veto authority and power as it relates to the money or the budget, but you can amend any bill that comes up. So the veto is something that you don't have to do. And then in addition to that, you make about 4,000 appointments during your term. So which means if you were there 2 terms, that would be 8,000. And many of those appointees will be there longer than the government would be there. So the legislature would not so easily change it. The people of Virginia would like to see it changed, and I think any numbers of polls will show that. But I think the legislature is saying, hey, look, give us some of that appointment authority. Give us some of the authority that resides in the governor so that his 8-year period would not be such that it would control us and strangle us. And that might be some merit to that. I would like to see it change because it takes you at least a couple of years to get your sea legs, to know what you're doing in that position. And then by the time you get to what you know what you're doing, it's time for you to go. So I'd like to see it change.
Former Mayor of Richmond, former Governor of Virginia, Doug Wilder, joins us on the C-SPAN bus. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.